And we are live. Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Schlockaholics. I'm joined, of course, by my co-hosts, Cody and Septim Sin. What's up, boys?
Hey, howdy, hey.
Today we are going to be talking a little bit about Septim Sin's recent release, the Shackled Demon project that he did in, partnership with Kyle Rappaport. And, I think it's going to be a good time. Before we jump into that, we're going to kick the trailer out for you guys so that you have a little taste of what we're going to be diving into tonight. And then we'll get into the finer points of this motherfucker.
Septum Sin versus the world! So we're about to watch the movie. Sorry about that. So we're putting the Eaten Alive. Hi, I'm Douglas Godino. I'm just here to tell you I'm with my friend Kyle Rapport, and I'm in my house right now. And I'm doing this documentary about how I've been feeling kind of like weird things have been going on in my house, like unexplainable things. I'm not looking! I'm not looking! Oh wait, I'd be careful if I were you. Were you leaning on that? Please tell me right now. Were you leaning on the side?
No, I wasn't. What the hell? I can't. Why are you pushing me?
Oh no.
I can't live here.
I can't.
I can't.
I don't know, man. There's a lot of sweet Goosebumps masks in that house. I think I could live there.
Yes, there is.
Even with the demon.
Oh,
So that was the trailer for the Shackled Demon project. A little DIY horror flick, found footage style thing made by Douglas Godino and Kyle Rappaport. I'm going to let you go ahead and give us a little bit more of the details on that, Brandon, because, you have more of a connection to this than we do. And maybe a little insight behind the scenes and how it all came together and whatnot. About all I could tell you before I hand it off to him is that this movie is something like 13 years in the making. Whoops, wrong one. They did it initially, I think it was around 2008, right? And then this is the first that it's got a physical release, which I'll let you, explain.
So, of course, if Kyle sees this, he can correct me in the comments, but this is what I believe is the history of the film. As he and Doug had made it around that 2008 timeline when they were still, I think, in high school. And then they had originally called it The Legend of the Shackled Demon. And then he had it released on his YouTube channel for a while. But later on, he got in touch with Will Colazzo, and they recut the film a little bit and changed it to Shackled Demon Project, and that's where you see the poster art from and some of those contributions. And they had it on Vimeo for a while. But then he had been trying to get it distributed physically, so they got to actually in the winter of this year, January, February, he had been trying to get with some people, and they just weren't having it. So I worked with Evan Jacobs and Hadinia Films, and we decided to help him put together a limited release, 30-disc run, and of course another run on Vimeo, which is why we had two cuts. We had an uncut version that kind of a few of y'all got, and then there was one that was officially sold through Sub Rosa, which was the cut version, which also went up on Vimeo, and we'll discuss that a little bit later because all of us watched the uncut version. Matter of fact, the trailer that you saw there, I cut that one together myself. That's why it's such a sloppy trailer. But I cut both trailers for this, so that was there. So I learned a lot during this, but Kyle and Doug were gracious enough to let me work with this movie and us try to get it out. So I think that, as far as, basement horror and anything done by teenagers, I mean, shoot, I don't think I would have been capable of what they did as a teen, at least special effects wise anyway. So it's just kind of fun to see what can be done if you put your mind to it, for a little to no budget movie.
I find it fascinating that it is kind of like there's a little piece of our entire group of people in here when you think about it. Even though we didn't have anything directly to do with it, like Dan's music is there in the fucking trailer, and graphic that I made for you are in there, and Evan Jacobs helped you with it. And I mean, it is sort of neat how, all these little elements of the stuff that you do and your friends came together in are all little elements of what make up this release. So I think it's fascinating. I mean, I was tripping on that last night. Like, there's, it's just a little Photoshop thing I did for your channel, but it's like on the case and in the fucking trailer and on my TV, and I didn't put it there, and that's cool.
It's amazing
you guys for getting it out there. What's up?
In my opinion, it's just kind of cool to have it. Matter of fact, I have two. A second one is going to be not this film, but another release is going to have that logo on it and that little thing. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's super cool, man. Never thought. And I mean, I was super surprised when I saw that you put it in there, because it's like, oh shit.
Oh, it's an awesome logo. So it works very well.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that it's super cool little time capsule of these kids' lives back then. And their ambitions to make films. I like it just for hanging out in their house, because there's cool masks and like toys and stacks of horror movies all over the place. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You want to give us the basic rundown of the plot, and we'll start breaking this guy down a little bit?
Oh yeah, it's a pretty simple plot. Doug has noticed some stuff is going on in his house, so he got his friend Kyle to come over, and they're trying to do a little documentary to see if they can pick up the paranormal activity in the house, because they want to prove that ghosts are real. And unfortunately for them, there was something very real in the household, and things don't quite go so well. But that's spoiler territory, and there are spoilers in this discussion, so
yeah, this shit's getting spoiled hard, guys. So
but it is available on Vimeo right now if you want to watch it. It's a cheap rental, like a $2 rental or something like that.
Yeah, and does Vimeo money go to Doug and Kyle, or
it does?
How does that work with Vimeo?
The 100% of what doesn't go to Vimeo, Evan Jacobs keeps it in like a build-up account, and so pretty much whatever Vimeo doesn't take goes to Kyle and Doug 100%. So when we were selling the DVDs and Blu-rays, the only things that they didn't get out of that was the fees that Sub Rosa took, which is about 50%, and then of course a little bit for both me and Evan Jacobs when it came to just getting our fees back for making them.
Right, which is fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, any of you guys listening, if you want to just support independent filmmakers and stuff, pop over there. Even if you've already seen the movie, kick them a $2 rental on that Vimeo. I'm sure that they'll appreciate it. Yeah. So basically, like he said, these kids are just sort of hanging out in their house, and they've been apparently experiencing paranormal activity. So they decide to start videotaping the shit, to capture what's going on. As far as I can tell, there is a demon that's shackled and in a net. I think they may have seen the movie Dead and Buried, because the whole net over it is super cool, and it reminds me a lot of the opening scene of that film. But to make a long story short, the one kid, Doug, ends up getting possessed by the demon, right?
Yep.
And that's sort of what it is. It's basically if you mixed Blair Witch, like The Unnameable, and The Exorcist together, you get Shackled Demon Project, for my money. I don't know. What was your first I guess since you're the one who started us on this journey, what was your impression of this movie when you first saw it and your general just thoughts on it, as far as anything we haven't already touched on?
Yeah, I saw it a few years ago when I first met Kyle, and he kind of shared that with me. And I looked at it. I always grade movies like this on a curve because I'm not going to be grading it versus Blumhouse or anything like that where they got lots of money. I grade this on my shot on video scale, I guess you could say.
What up, Mikey? Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, and I do think that this one was done pretty well for what they had. For a no-budget film, it was quite amazing what they could do with the effects, and that did give me kind of a cool first impression of it. They had told me that one of the chief ones was Paranormal Activity, which I guess that makes sense because that had come out around the time.
Yeah.
And but I think this one actually, the Paranormal Activity has the most scares towards the end. I think this one balances out the scares a little bit better.
Yeah, the Goosebumps merch makes this better than Paranormal Activity. I mean, I'd much rather watch this film.
So I think they did a pretty good job of balancing it out because you don't have to sit through a bunch of like being bored for most of the movie and then get the scares at the end. You're actually right up there seeing ghosts and stuff right at the beginning, and they just move you right into the action, which I think is pretty cool.
Oh yeah. What about you, Cody? What was your experience with this the first time you watched it and your general thoughts?
I liked it. Taking it for what it was, kind of like we said, just two buddies getting together and making a movie in their house, and they definitely did a lot with what they had, making their own special effects and whatnot, and their own gore and all that. I thought it was very well done and definitely better than what I could have done now, or even more so, 12 or 13 years ago when they made it.
Right. I find it fascinating that these guys they're in high school, you said, right?
Yep, they were just teens at the time.
So their parents were down to just like let the house be fucking covered in masks and toys and horror movies and have like a whole dungeon set built in the basement. And I just found that super fascinating when I was watching it. Like, holy shit, these guys' parents are awesome. Like whoever's house this is, I think it was Doug's.
Yeah, Doug's house.
It just looks like the raddest place. I mean, I feel like if I lived with these guys like in the same town, I probably would have been the third friend that shot the movie, so it wouldn't have needed to be found footage. And I would have just been hanging out at that fucking house all the time, I think, because he had a really good selection of movies too. A lot of the same stuff I was buying back then.
Oh yeah,
Eaten Alive, not least of them. Like I love that.
I'll admit this movie had me buy Eaten Alive from Arrow.
Oh, it's so good. I've got the Dark Skies film version that they're talking about in the movie. The special edition of it. Super underrated film. I guess we can't beat around the bush. Eaten Alive needs to be talked about. It's basically Tobe Hooper's follow-up to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
Early example of Robert Englund playing creepy characters. Super good movie. It's basically, it covers like the Joe Ball murders down in Texas, where like this guy that owned a hotel was feeding people to his pet crocodile. A lot of people shit on it because it's not just Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I love it because he went for like a Psycho kind of a thing, and he was really doing it as like a nod to all the old soundstage horror films where they're like shot on a soundstage instead of out at locations. So it gives it this eerie like otherworldly kind of feel to it that I really like. Highly recommend it, especially for the Robert Englund lines. And these guys definitely put in some of the better parts of the movie and those little snippets too. They even put in the "get up on those knees" part with fucking Robert Englund, which is just one of my favorite fucking lines I've ever heard him read. So they clearly were actually watching the movie. They didn't just chuck it on randomly. It was like,
oh yeah,
you could tell that they really liked Eaten Alive, and that came through. As you guys both pointed out, by being a movie just made by a couple of kids with nothing, there's a certain charm that adds to it. It very much feels like some of this stuff was maybe just improvised as they went along. I don't know that they had like a script necessarily that they sat down and wrote, line for line. But they gave it their all, man. And there's actually some surprisingly good acting from both of the dudes in this movie at various points, given, what it is and what they were working with.
I mean, I look at certain things like, we've talked about Amityville Karen before going on, which I think was the movie that I think Kyle wanted this to go head to head with. And I got to say, I do think as far as
Thank you, Michael.
Quality wise, I think this one still beats Amityville Karen in many aspects, which is sad because it had a heck of a lot more money backing it. But the poster design, I don't know. I think that the poster design of Amityville Karen drags more people, but I do think that this is an awesome poster, though.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can hire someone to airbrush a wizard on the side of their junker van, but these guys didn't need the airbrushed wizard. It's just, it is what it is, You guys know what I'm saying, right? Those dudes that have like the sweet van with a mural painted on the side and it's like broke down in their fucking stepmom's driveway. They just live in it, like that dude on fucking Step by Step. This movie, though, I do like the poster that they did for this as well. It's got a very DIY feel to it. But yeah, I mean, those guys have the money to put the sexy fringe on their turds over there. These guys just let it speak for itself, and I think that that's cool. I don't know that this having like a fancy cover like that would really benefit it. I think it looks like a fun basement tape the way that it's presented.
Oh yeah. I think that this, I really do think, and I know when Evan Jacobs was working with me on the release, he had said that, yeah, this poster itself is going to move all 30 without a problem. And and it was kind of funny because the distributor had actually been doubtful. It's like, I don't think this is going to sell at all. And then, of course, as soon as it goes up, he sells all 30 within a day.
Yeah, even if I didn't know you guys at all and I saw that cover, I'd be tempted to look into it just because it looks like such an odd DIY like basement tape, I like that kind of shit. A lot of us have movies that are way worse than this in our collection that we paid way more for,
Oh, heck yeah.
And we will continue to add those happily. What's that, Cody?
We're all victims on buying a movie based on the cover art and just hoping that it's anything close to what it looks like on the cover.
Oh yeah, those guys know what they're doing. We've been getting got like that since the 90s in the video stores, you just rent it and the cover's a total fucking lie. But this isn't lying to you at all. He was really good. He's right there. It looks pretty close to what it looks like in the film, actually. Yep. So yep. I think that's just a screenshot from the film that they doctored up with like Photoshop or whatever. Just put some eyes and fangs on it or whatever. Yeah. I don't know, man.
I mean, I've actually gotten a couple people who had contacted and said, man, who is the artist that did that? I want them to work on our movies or for bigger levels. I'm not going to say names on it, but it was kind of cool to see that some people had some interest in it, liking that poster that much, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It gives strange vibes, man. It's like, and there's certain elements of the movie too that are like reminiscent of YouTube creature videos of that era where it would be like a rake. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the rakes. They're like a creepypasta creature or whatever.
Yeah.
But there was like all these videos on YouTube where, people were supposedly finding them in their backyards and they'd be like slinking around back there. It's got that vibe to it. And the cover really reminds me of that too. Like a trail cam photo that you would see in the backwoods behind your house or something of some creepypasta creature that wants to fucking eat you, just out there eating kids or something. I like it. It's a cool direction to go with it. And I like the title too. I think the Legend of the Shackled Demon doesn't quite roll off the tongue in the same way. And this title, The Shackled Demon Project, reflects the context of the film in that this shit was going on, so he decided to make a project out of it and like do a documentary on it.
Yeah. I think at the time, and I think that when the decision that was made was more like, say, it'll be like the Blair Witch Project, and there's a lot of Blair Witch in this, so
Right.
I can tell that much.
Yeah, there is. I feel like there's several nods to what the hell is that? I think it was Kyle at one point in the movie does the Empire Strikes Back where he's like, "It's impossible" or whatever, and I fucking laughed so hard, dude. So it's like, whoa, Empire Strikes Back in this bitch all of a sudden, because the way he says it is like spot on too. I don't know if it was intentional or if it was an accident, but there's little slide nods I feel like to other stuff in this, and obviously they make a point to show their horror collection off a little bit and to showcase other horror films. I'm always a fan of movies that do that. It almost reminded me like you could do this on a bigger budget and almost have it be like a Chainsaw and Dave versus the Ghosts kind of a thing, like this is begging to like be remade. That was the main takeaway that I took from it the two times that I watched it, is like, damn, if these guys had like $2,000, a cameraman, and that's it, they could do this again and just make it fucking amazing.
Oh yeah.
Kyle confirms that was indeed some Empire Strikes Back in there.
That's awesome.
Good stuff, man. Not to say that this movie needs to be remade either. It's fine the way that it is for what it is. It's a rad little snippet of their early filmmaking and just them having fun as bros. I think that's the most striking thing about the movie, is it just looks like it was a blast to do. It's clearly done over multiple days, and they point that out in the film and make it make some sense. But it's like they've got their own personal time capsule, one of the raddest sleepovers they ever had. And that's not a lot of people save those early films that they do, let alone go through the trouble to put them out. Kyle says, hopefully we'll do a sequel. I definitely think that you should, man. It'd be cool to do like a 20 years later, the shackles are back off or something like that. I think it would go real good. Maybe you can have multiple demons, do like some Bad Ben shit in the sequel where there's multiple creatures vying for your guys' soul or whatever. That'd be cool.
They do hint in the movie about. They do hint in the movie that like the neighborhood people have been mysteriously disappearing in it, so it could very well be. They said that maybe this is happening in other houses. It was in that part where they were walking outside.
Oh,
yeah. I'm gonna sneeze real quick, so hold on.
Yeah, sequel would be cool. Twice the shackles, twice the demons.
Fuck yeah, dude. Or even
Same
like
project.
other movies where it's just those two characters are, I guess they're not really playing characters, they're playing themselves, but it would be neat to find out that their whole neighborhood is like just infested with all types of paranormal stuff, or supernatural shit, or cryptids, or different things like that. Have them out there fucking running around with a Mothman in the woods or something like that. That could be fun. I'm a big fan of Scooby-Doo shit like that, or like Buffy style stuff where it's the town's on a hellgate and there's fucking succubi running around in this sumbitch or something.
Or do it with a bunch of knockoff Goosebumps characters.
Yeah, dude, that'd be really cool. Maybe like a Goosebump tape gets haunted, and then the creatures that are in the episodes in the tape come to life and try to kill them or something. That could be real cool. Kyle says, thanks so much for doing this podcast and talking about the film. It means so much to me. Thank you, Mo, Septim, Cody, for your love and support for the film. You guys rock. Thanks, man. Thanks for doing it. I'm glad to
Appreciate
have a collection. It's an interesting artifact of DIY filmmaking, and I wish I was ambitious enough to have done anything similar. Maybe someday.
Right.
I have an idea for Irritable Anus that I've been working on, but I gotta find people
Sounds
to help me
painful.
shoot that. I don't think my cousin's gonna do it.
Hey, I've got my own Amityville script.
It will be.
Actually, Cody's seen my script.
Yeah.
No, it's not good, but
Oh
at
yeah,
least
the webcam.
I'm looking forward to it.
So,
That doesn't
I
need to
mean,
be, it doesn't really need to be. It'll be good in execution, Uh,
it's well, one of the things I remember that I talked with Evan Jacobs, and he's got like 30 some films on his Anhedonia site, and he had said, hey, if you see something, film it. I mean, what's the worst it could be? It could be bad. Well, who cares? And then film the next thing, and then that one might be good. Because even if you film 10 bad films and one of them and the 11th one is an amazing film, you've still done an amazing job. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to live by.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the quickest way as like an indie filmmaker that you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot is trying to be like a perfectionist straight out of the gate, or at all, really. I don't think filmmaking is really one of those things where anything's ever gonna turn out perfect. It's not like painting or writing a song or something where you can just sit there by yourself and tinker with it until it's to a point where it's absolutely the way you want it to be. With films, usually there's other people involved, and just circumstances and equipment and various things make it hard to make it perfect, or impossible, really. I'm a big fan of filmmakers putting stuff like this out. In some alternate universe, Doug and Kyle just out on us, and they were like, "Oh, it's fun, but maybe let's wait to actually put out a movie until we have a bunch of money behind it or something." And then that never happens. And this thing exists on my so that's a testament to what you can do, even with your basement tape from 2008. I love it. I think that we should all maybe take a page out of the book and just put out some projects, and let it, they're good. If they're not, we learn something from doing it, and it's out there. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah. Totally agree.
Kyle says he's working on a short horror film right now for an anthology. It's an Amityville themed one, and his in it will be called Spirit Box. I don't know why it's not put in the comments up on the screen. There it goes. That's a cool title, man. I don't know what a Spirit Box is. I know there's a band called Spirit Box. They're supposed to be good, I guess. I just imagine it's you put some ghost wieners in there. I don't know what the fuck a Spirit Box is, but I'm willing to learn. I think a good idea for a movie would be Amityville Craptivity, and it's just about a ghost that's like a serial dumper, just going around pooping in random parts of their house.
I mean,
maybe it turns out that it's the ghost of someone they denied service or denied use of the restroom or something. I don't know.
I want to say that I don't know whether this is the one or not, but I know that this has been going around on Facebook, so it's pretty public. That there's an anthology film called Amityville Nail in the Coffin, which is basically saying there's too many Amityville films. This is it. This is the last one. And and of course they put out the call for a lot of short filmmakers, which that's going to be a fun one, I think, where you get some stuff there. If I had the ability to get webcam out by that time, which I don't, but if I did, that would be really a cool thing.
That would be neat. My fear with the Amityville thing is it's going to end up, so many people are doing them, right?
Oh, God, yes.
And if we're honest, most of them are trash.
Yeah.
But there's some that are good, and they're forever tied to this Amityville thing, and will probably be written off by half the people that might look at them because of the Amityville thing.
I mean, there's
I guess what I'm getting at is there's good indie films that are being shackled with the Amityville title that probably could do decently well without it, but with that Amityville title, they're pretty much only going to get seen by dorks like us that are gluttons for punishment,
Well, I admit I am one of those people who collects almost everything Amityville. I even have the Amityville outhouse. So, and of course,
I'm not
hating.
I'm not hating. I'm just saying it's a very specific lane that they're attaching themselves to with the Amityville thing. And I just find it fascinating that that's what took off, because
that's the name.
I could understand, like, I don't know. I guess Amityville works because it's just vaguely ghost related stuff or whatever. You could just do it. It works, but it's an odd thing to me. I don't know. Maybe it's because I was never huge into the Amityville movies to begin with, so I don't really understand what draws people to that title.
Well, it's a good way for somebody that normally wouldn't get some eyes on their feature to get one if they throw Amityville on it. And with the absurdity of all these sequels, it's kind of like a lot of the junk we like. They come up with this title where it's like, even though I gotta watch like Amityville Karen, I mean, you gotta watch it.
Yeah,
I think
I feel that, man. I mean, it's dudes like us that like really dumb shit are gonna fucking watch them just because the titles are funny. There's nothing about there's no part of Amityville Outhouse that makes me want to do anything other than watch it immediately, or the Amityville Vibrator, or Amityville in Space. I mean, it really works for just fun titles, I suppose, too.
I'll give it to Amityville Vibrator. It was a fun watch. It really was.
It sounds.
I'm not gonna knock that one. That one was actually quite fun to watch.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to knock any of this. I guess what I'm just saying is that I think that there's so many of them out there now that there's bound to be movies that are better than the Amityville title would indicate, if that makes sense, And I guess what I was getting at is just some of those movies are stuck with a limited or a very specific viewing demographic because of the title, when they could have probably done okay without it. I haven't seen enough of them to know. I just would imagine that's the case with as many of them as there is out there at this point. No ad would be found in this that I saw. That might have been one of those stacks in their collection, though. I'm sure it had to have been. They seemed to have a well-rounded movie selection there. But yeah, pretty much, it starts out real sort of innocent enough. They just are kind of hanging around. They've been seeing and hearing weird noises and seeing things move on occasion. And then they end up running into the face in the fucking door. And that's one of my favorite little bits of the movie, because Doug talks about how he has a hard time looking out that window at night. And I can understand that, man. Just looking at that window and that door, if I lived there, I think I would like run past it once it was after dark, because that's always still gets me. Like if I'm hanging out in my living room at night, I close all the fucking curtains because I don't like that idea of like looking out a window and seeing something look back at you suddenly. And they capture it pretty well in this. What's that?
That mask is a really neat mask. Doug has created some amazing masks, and he still does. He still does do some of that work. That mask I think is one of the creepier ones. They're not the creepiest monster I saw in this. There were a couple that I thought were there, but I did like that mask. I even used that as the menu thing. I left it intentionally fuzzy there because that gives you that kind of like, what is that? What's at that door? What's looking in at me?
Right. Yeah, I like the design of it a lot. It's like a one part Goosebumps, one part like Chud. It's got the kid clearly has some fun influences on it, and I think isn't there like a special feature on the disc where it shows like the little interview with each of them looking back on it or whatever, and he's like standing there with all his masks that he's working on and shit. Like, and I think he shows a couple of masks in the movie, like the first one that's shaking around. It looks like it's like a mask in progress that he was working on, which I'm jealous of for sure. This guy was basically living the Corey Feldman Friday the 13th Part 4 life for real, which is admirable, man. A lot of us dreamed about that as kids, but we didn't actually get those kits. I used to always look at the mask making kits on, I think it was like monstermaker.com or some shit, and just dream about how cool it would be to actually do it. But it seemed so out of reach, like I would never be able to do that. Those were really Tom Savini masks. That kid didn't make them. But this guy proves that no, you can fucking do it if you really want to.
Mm-hmm. True enough.
But yeah, they run into that ghost, and then things pretty quickly like heat up. You know, there's various paranormal activity that takes place. A lot of them basically just trying to, you know, not let it freak them out too much and brush it off so that they can continue to document it. But then, you know, things start to get a bit dangerous, I guess. I don't know. You guys have anything you want to throw in about any of these sections of the film?
I mean, that part where they were examining the shed, I did like how how Kyle is frequently the one, and they managed to make his character relatively stable with it. Though there are a couple of like inconsistencies, but not a lot, where he's the one who is like, heck no, I'm not doing this.
Just right
I
immediately in
am,
the house.
yeah, he goes right
Yeah.
as it. Nope.
I love his running in the house too, man, because like he had to run slow enough so that he didn't just blast out of frame, but it just ends up looking so fucking funny, dude. He's like running in slow motion, but not. Hey, you got to do it to serve the way you're shooting the film. I get it, but it's just so fun. It's one of those little like things, you know, those technical issues that they just made the best of it. Because if he just took off running, he'd have been in the house before Doug could even turn around and catch him in frame, you know. So he had to slow it down a bit. I almost feels like they did it once or twice and he couldn't keep up with them with the camera, so they had to do it again. The shed is fucking creepy, dude. His whole backyard looks like there's bodies buried back there, and I'm sure there wasn't. It's just a normal backyard. But it just has a cool look to it, and that creepy fucking cellar door at the back of his house. There's like that alone, you could build a whole movie around just that cellar door, you know.
That was a
Shit, did I lose you guys? No, there you are.
that scene where you see like the kind of zombie face come in there, and of course that's Kyle doing the zombie face that's in the window, and which is why they had him run out so he could play the zombie. But that looks really cool.
Okay, that makes sense.
Huh?
The whole fucking Hormel chili man in there with the fucking goo all over his face. I loved it, dude. It reminds me of that. See, that's one of those points in the movie where it goes into proper like bizarre, almost of like old Harmony Korine art projects or something, or like Trash Hum.
Oh yeah. I think that with these types of movies, having it be what it can be is what's important, and using things like using the screen to blur it just enough to give it that much more of a realistic flavor is kind of cool.
Yeah, that was brilliant. That
Oh
was
yeah,
a really smart idea.
fucking genius, dude. It blurs it just enough to where you can't quite focus in on the edges of the mask, and it just makes it. It feels like some proper found footage, gross, like. I don't even know, man. Like I said, it really, really took me back to seeing like old Harmony Korine art projects that he would do, where it's like just strange, abstract, semi-disturbing, like, you know, made on VHS horror show type stuff, you know. That and the bits where they first see the demon, you know, and it's like in the net and it's breaking the chains and stuff. Those were like my favorite bits of the whole movie because it gets proper unsettling for a minute just with the way it's shot and the way it feels like actual found footage. A lot of these movies that do this seemingly just forget about the idea that the whole thing with found footage is it's supposed to be found footage, you know.
Oh yeah.
Just having a shaky cam doesn't make it found footage. It just makes it a shaky cam movie. These guys actually were smart enough, even as teenagers, to include them finding some footage in their found footage movie, which was pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a cool scene with the demons with the demon had his old handheld with the net on and the shackles and him kind of just letting them know that he's there and he's not going anywhere for a while.
Yeah, just shooting his vlogs.
That's right.
The
Hashtag
vlogging demon
life.
project. That's
like,
no,
comment, and subscribe.
Oh, okay, Septum had to step away for a moment. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that these guys were able to put together some proper creepy stuff in this. I think that overall, the movie is surprisingly more coherent too than a lot of found footage movies, especially DIY ones. Uh, yeah, it meanders at different points, but you always pretty much know what's going on and know what the whole plot of the movie is and the point of it. And that's something that sometimes can get lost in found footage movies because there's a tendency to just shoot stuff and kind of throw it all together. But this actually does have like kind of a narrative structure to it, which is pretty impressive for being what it is.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think that Doug did a really good job of shooting the movie. There's some creatively done bits where it's still, there's that suspension of disbelief that you have to, accept that these kids would still be filming this at this point. But that's explained by the fact that he has set out to document it. It's not found footage by happenstance. He's not just didn't happen to be recording when the shit started going down and he just kept recording. The point of the movie was they were setting out to record this shit. So it immediately allows you to kind of buy the fact that they're still recording at points where a normal person would have ditched the camera and got the fuck out of there. And then the way that he shoots it, and like from a cinematography point of view, I guess, is pretty well done. For being kids, they definitely had like a good grasp on how to shoot this in a way that still gave it that found footage handheld camera vibe, but also managed to frame things up and make it feel like a bit of a movie still, which people with much more money than these dudes and much more experience have failed miserably at trying to do that with found footage movies. So kudos to them for getting that done.
Yeah, for sure. I don't remember. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't remember any parts where I couldn't understand either one of them.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing that should be pointed out. Audio quality in this is pretty damn good. I don't know what they've done in terms of cleaning it up for this release that we watched it on, but it's got better audio quality than most indie movies on this level that I've seen. That's a huge problem in these types of films, is just muddy audio where you can't really decipher what the fuck's meant to be going on. Again, something that films with much bigger budgets have failed at. And these guys, whatever, and maybe it was just meant to be the camera that they were using had a really good microphone, but I agree, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even when they were in separate rooms, I mean, you could still hear them talking or sometimes yelling at each other very, very clearly, very easily. And that's a big thing for a lot of, like what you just said. Some of these movies just kind of just guesstimate what they're saying to try to follow along with the story, and that wasn't an issue with this one.
Oh yeah. I've watched movies from like the bigger indie studios or whatever, or labels that like, even dude, there's a couple of full moon movies that I've just not been able to make it through because the audio is shit. Thankfully, usually they're better about that, but the point is there are definitely indie films out there where I just haven't been able to really properly watch them because outside of just background imagery, because I can't hear what the fuck's going on, and then lighting. I will say this for him too. A lot of movies shot by like kids like this, basement tapes, tend to either drastically underlight everything or overlight things to the point where it feels goofy. You know what I mean? Where you can see that they've like turned on every lamp in the fucking house and are pointing them all into this one corner so that they can get their shot. There is that like desk lamp in the living room or whatever that's just sort of on at one point, but other than that, it feels like they just lucked into having really good natural lighting in the house based on whatever lights that they had turned on, so it never had that feeling like it was staged necessarily, if that makes sense. It feels like they're just hanging out, and in the house, and we're able to get good footage that way. The only point of the movie visually where you can't really see what's going on seems to be intentional, and that's that point where they're running around outside at night, and that still has a cool eerie quality to it, so it doesn't hurt the movie any, and it was an intentional choice. Whereas lots of other films like this, all the stuff with the demons would have been hard as fuck to see, so they nailed it in terms of like audio and visual. I think they did a stellar job on this, especially given what they were working with, which looked like a little high 8 camera or something. I'm not super fucking well versed with the different tapes and stuff, but they had like, you know, those mini tapes that your parents had in the camcorder back in the day, you know.
Well, I mean, I had noticed one of the things I noticed when I've been doing my review and I've been working on the psychoanalysis of Sharkula, even, which has a little bit more money behind it. It's still low budget, but I was looking at the lighting. The lighting in this movie, yeah, it does make it to where it looks a little bit muddy at times. But, you know, that's because of that and the quality of the camera. But, you know, when I was looking at the other movie, there's so much motion blur because of the lighting. So it's amazing how, like, if you don't get the lighting right and the camera doesn't know how to adapt to it, it's amazing how much of a difference it can make as far as the presentation.
Oh,
And the film. I mean, there was no motion blur, which was great, except for when they wanted it, which they got motion blur at that scene where they had that zombie coming at them when they were outside, where the zombie in the bathrobe with the brain in its hand, which I also thought was pretty cool as a scare wise.
Yeah,
I think my favorite fucking cameo creature was the alien in the bathrobe. When Doug is having like his hallucinations. It's so cool, dude. It's such a charming little thing that they threw in there, that Doug is like starting to get possessed and he's like, I don't want to open my eyes, you know, and then he sees this alien walk in a bathrobe. I love it, man.
I like it because if you notice, it's like looks like it's on a vacuum cleaner or something that they propped up and had it coming in.
Oh, it wasn't a real person. I thought it was Kyle and they're all lanky. Fucking, it works though, man. That alien mask is cool. It looks like it was like homemade out of paper mache or like, you know, an early sculpt by Doug or something. But it looks good, you know. And you only see it for a second and it disappears. So it's like the perfect way to repurpose stuff they had lying around the house. They did it on a vacuum cleaner. That's awesome.
I mean, that's what it looks like if you look carefully. I've seen this
Kevin McAllister Home Alone shit, you know, where he's like making it look like people are home and he's got the cardboard cutouts on the fucking little trains and shit.
Yeah, this is a film I've seen probably about 11 or 12 times in the past year, which this is not the kind of film that you want to watch 11 or 12 times. No offense to the film, but it is still a fun film, and I definitely got to see a lot of little tidbits that I probably wouldn't have seen.
Oh, I imagine.
I just like that even demons like to be comfortable with the whole bathrobe wardrobe.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of them.
You gotta have a bathrobe.
Comfort is important.
Spend all that time shackled up, you just probably want to just
relax.
After you're out.
Just have a nice little Sunday.
I think really the only thing that, if I had to put like a gripe on the film, it's not even really a gripe. It's just, how do I put this in a nice way? The movie's probably 35 minutes, 40 minutes longer than it should be. But I say that about most movies. So, you know, Kyle or anybody listening to that, it's not something that's directed just at you. I'm a firm believer of less is more. I think that you could do a hell of like this is the creator cut of the movie. You could make like a consumer cut of this that for like Tubi or something. That would be like 55 minutes long. It would trim the fat off. And I'm not even saying that there's scenes that necessarily need to be entirely removed. Well, maybe other than them popping popcorn and watching Eaten Alive. As much as I love that, it's like, you know, it's probably, you know, like 7 minutes worth of stuff that doesn't need to be in there. But the rest of it, you could just trim little bits off it off and tighten the movie up just a little bit. And I think it would just make it fly by, and it would be like constant left, right fucking punches of spookiness. Because like you said, Brandon, there really is, they throw you right into the stuff pretty quickly. And then the movie is, for as long as it is paced really, really well in terms of like where they place the creepy stuff in there with them just existing in the house or whatever. You don't ever go too long before there is like something interesting happening. But there's just it could be trimmed up a little bit to
Yeah.
make that feel more rapid and frantic. And then I think if you trimmed it like that, by the time you get to the point where Doug is starting to come unhinged a little bit, the movie would feel even more unhinged, if that makes sense.
One question I had for you all. So the scene basically that what was cut was the where they started watching Eaten Alive. Basically, it then cuts out all of the Eaten Alive stuff, and it picks right up with them hearing the noise from the basement.
Right.
Do you feel like that was a huge loss to people?
Again, I love Eaten Alive, so it's rad to see that in there.
I will say
But, I
we've seen enough of these movies to realize that a lot of directors do throw in those scenes for filler, and I think a lot of us are in the same boat where I'd rather just have a shorter movie and cut. This movie didn't have it so much, but I know that we can think of several movies where you could cut 30 minutes out of that movie. I'd rather it be 30 minutes and just be, beginning to end, just
banging.
yes.
Yeah. Like a Black Dahlia album, where it's 34 minutes of pure fucking crush. Like that's, so you could make like a super cut of this to show. You could even show it at like a table at conventions, and it'd fucking blow people away. I bet if you did like the truncated cut of it, because there is so much that happens in it, and even that filler is charming filler. It's a whole hell of a lot better than somebody just doing their hair while thrash metal plays in the background. So there's a lot of these indie guys that do the filler but don't even make it charming. The Eaten Alive stuff comes across as super fucking charming because these are just two horror nerds that we all immediately identify with because we're the same kind of kids, and when he stops and pops popcorn and does like a 3-minute review basically of Eaten Alive before popping it in and going through some key scenes, it warms my heart. But that being said, yeah, I don't think the movie would suffer too much without that being in there,
That's good because that's what most people got when they got the horse. But we had to make sure.
Were they able to at least leave in where he goes and picks out the movie? Or
Yeah,
did they just have to?
Basically, once they stop in, I mean, you notice like at the beginning of the DVD, I even have that scene. It's like we're watching this movie Eaten Alive. Like I put that in there because I thought it would be cool. Like, you're starting the movie essentially, but they cut right after that because I want to see them looking through.
I feel like they could have left, another scene of the movie playing, and then because I don't think you have to worry about like legal shit if it's like 10 seconds of the movie playing. I've seen plenty of movies distributed where there's like a minute of them watching Halloween on the screen or something, not a minute, but you know what I'm saying. Maybe just a little snippet of footage from the movie after that would have been neat, but just playing it safe, as long as they could still keep in the point where he picks out the movie, I think that's fun still, because if you pause it a couple of times, they had some good fucking movies in the stack that he goes and he gets that out of. Like, I think all of us can remember back when our horror collections were small enough that it was pretty much just all bangers. Now they've grown to the size that they are, and there's a lot of not bangers in there. But back in 2008, my horror collection was probably pretty similar. It was like one shelf, and just all of the movies were fucking sick,
That's a weird thing, isn't it? That most of us who are collectors do. We see somebody's collection, and if we're over visiting it, we just can't help but have our eyes wander over to that collection to see what they have.
Oh yeah, man! I was watching. I'm real bad about it when I fucking see like, the little like videos on, because I watch a lot of true crime stuff online. So there'll be like some school shooter kid and they're showing his bedroom, and if I see tapes, I immediately have to pause it and be like, all right, what does he have in that collection they're going to try to blame this on? And sure enough, you see there's always horror films in there. Thankfully we've moved away from that as a society a little bit, blaming stuff on crap like that, but it's just fun to see other people's collection. I don't care if they're a mass murderer. I just want to see what fucking tapes he has.
I'll watch Septon's videos with Jake, and I'll be listening more than watching them, and just kind of looking at the background and looking at, okay, I've got that. Oh, I forgot all about that. I need to check that one out.
Right.
And it's an addiction.
It is. I find myself doing it less so with books, because a lot of books in people's houses, I feel like, are just placeholder. They're filler books that they just put on the shelf to make it look full.
Right.
But when it's like, horror movies or indie movies like this, then I tend to look at the bookshelves too, because, if we buy books, usually they're interesting books, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
You're
It's not
actually
like some
reading.
normie's fucking living room where there's like just random old looking books on a shelf next to their live, laugh, love fucking thing or whatever. It's, there might be some Godzilla books in there, books about, just cool stuff, serial killers, monster making, all that kind of shit. Don't recall if I noticed any books in this movie, but there are a couple of different scenes where you see stacks of movies around. And then obviously there's just masks fucking oozing out of every corner of this house. Doug definitely, I don't know what his living situation with his parent was, but huge shout out to those people for allowing this nerddom to flourish, because it was everywhere in that house, to the point where you could tell, I don't think that they just dressed the house up to look like this while they were shooting it. I think that's just the way this kid's house was,
Especially since I think it was during Christmas that this was filmed. I'm not 100% sure on it, but I remember hearing that. And of course, you can tell some of the stuff like the zombie encounter was definitely filmed during Christmas time.
Right.
So that'd be a weird time to have a bunch of that stuff up too.
I think his parents had to have also been fans of the shit. I don't imagine that you'd just let your kid take over the house and build a whole set in the basement like that. You're either weirdly supportive or you kind of fucking like it too on some level.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. He could be an only child, and that's their baby boy.
Oh yeah, he's just got that single sibling thing going on there, where all the shit that would normally be divvied out between brothers and sisters, he just gets all of it, all the love, all the freedom. I'm not knocking it. That's rad, man. Like I said, if I'd lived locally to these guys, I probably would have been trying to be over at that house all the time. Not just because of your cool toys, Doug. I'm sure you're awesome too. You seem like a fun guy, but for sure, when I would be befriending you because of the Goosebumps masks. But yeah, man. I mean, it's just I still find that really fascinating. That I've never seen anything like that. He's like the real life Corey Feldman from Friday 4, man.
Yeah. Tommy Jarvis.
I don't think there's a kid among us that saw Tommy Jarvis's room as a kid and weren't like, man, I wish that I was this kid, and this is the only example I think I've seen in real life of like somebody really doing it, so cheers to you, bud. That's fucking epic. Hopefully he still has a lot of those masks. Unfortunately, latex tends to deteriorate though.
Well, that I know he still has that one mask that was looking into the house at the beginning, because they says that in the commentary. But
let's not forget the flying mask too. There's a mask fucking flies around that bitch at one point.
Yep.
But I know the downstairs they had it set up like that. I don't know if that was set up like that all the time where they're at. It sounded like he was allowed to decorate for Halloween and stuff.
That's what I was going to get at. It almost looked like they were running like a neighborhood haunt out of the basement for Halloween time. So his parents let him like paint it and then, decorate it differently each year or whatever. It's just a theory. I haven't listened to the commentary yet, so maybe Doug could elaborate on that.
Didn't he mention towards the beginning that the house looked a little bit more like that since it was around Halloween?
Yeah.
He could decorate it a little more.
Maybe, but there's even some of the artwork that's hung on the walls that's creepy. Like his parents, I feel like at least one of them had to have been a horror fan too. Because there's stuff that, when I was watching it, there's like a couple of paintings that are up on the walls that look like they just would normally be there. If all the masks weren't around, you might just walk past it thinking, oh, it's just some random parent painting. But then when you look at it, it's like a fucking alien, I think it was. So it's like, oh, that's neat, there's layers to this house of, this fandom just sort of seeped into it, and that's super cool. But yeah, I would really like to know. So Kyle, if you're in there and you can confirm, was he running like a Halloween haunt out of that basement in the season? Because that's a lot more than just Halloween decorations down in that basement. It was like purpose painted to look like a set,
Well, that basement was their studio. They like to do a lot of short films out of it.
Okay.
And so they did a lot of that out of the basement, and it's a pretty creepy basement. No lie. I mean, they did a great job of doing it.
Yeah.
And there's a film called Legend of an Old Time Friend that was a short film that's on the disc, and they do that also in the basement, where apparently Kyle is meeting up with Doug, and Kyle's going through some stuff, and he decides that, you know what, I'm going to take out all my anger on you, and I'm going to slaughter you, and and that's the short summary. But they used
also. It also looked like that basement may have been his workshop, like that he kind of makes his masks and stuff at.
Yeah, I think does he still live in that house? Because I feel like maybe it's just mixed up memories, but I feel like when I did watch that interview with him, it felt like he was still in that basement or like a similar sort of a place,
The basement's been painted, but yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't painted the same way, but it looked like he was standing in like some type of a basement or a garage or something like that. But the workshop thing, the whole studio workshop is genius. Guar does it, like they build all the shit right there, and then they have like a room that's just a green screen. The whole room is like fucking painted green, and that's where they shoot the music videos and stuff, is like right there. And then they have a practice space like right next to that. So the idea of like having all your shit contained in like one house or a warehouse or something is, I just think, such a genius way to do sort of DIY, more nitty gritty level stuff like that. Ideal scenario if you had a bunch of filmmaker friends that lived in the area and you could all pitch in money together to like rent a house and build that sort of a setup. You could just crank out indie movies all the time, and nobody's really like going super out of pocket for it because the sets already exist and the space is already there to do it. These kids were living the fucking dream, man, or at least Doug was living the dream.
He still has some of those masks, and he still makes them, but to what level, I'm not sure. I know on his Facebook page he's shown off a couple of masks he's made in the recent times, and he's definitely perfecting his craft as a special effects artist. I think that was his goal. I don't know if it's still his goal, but I know that was his goal at one point in time.
Well, hopefully, in the very least, they come back to making some films together, because there's potential in this for days, man. Which is why, when we were starting it up, I asked if they had other films, because I would definitely, just based on this, would for sure be down to watch whatever else they've put out,
There's one called House of Rathidicus that, though, I don't think Kyle doesn't like it as much, but I personally like it as much, if not better than this, because it really does show the special effects really well. And it's also a similar concept of a possession and stuff like that. It's worth a watch. It used to be pretty easy to get. It's not as easy to find these days. I was lucky enough to have bought a copy when they were selling them on Amazon.
Yeah, they need to get all that stuff compiled somewhere so that we can watch it and potentially even discuss it. For sure, I'd love to get both of the dudes on at different points or together for a group round robin sort of interview with them, and to just shoot the shit about rad horror stuff and masks and Goosebumps toys.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not every day that you see like a genuinely fun thrown together, DIY basement tape from a couple of kids like this that is as watchable as this is. Yeah, it's got its flaws for sure, but it's as we've pointed out, and this isn't us just blowing smoke up those guys' ass. It is better than a lot of stuff that you see on this level, and it's just dripping with tons of potential. I would love to see them remake it or revisit it with a sequel, because I think that there's enough here to do at least one other movie or a more fleshed out, better done version of this. And again, it's not because this shouldn't exist or whatever. It's just that I think that these two dudes specifically could revisit this and make it like everything they dreamed it could have been 13 years ago, because it's a great example of two kids making the most of what they had and just putting their passion to work to get it done, man. So if they did that now with like $2-3 grand, imagine how it would turn out,
Even with a no budget, you've got phones these days that film in 4K. And
nah, fuck that. I'd want it shot on tape again. So I think maybe better tape.
Speaking of phones, I forgot about that till just now when Kyle said he was going to call the police, and he grabbed like that 1920s style phone to pick up to call the police with.
Oh shit, he does, huh? I didn't even think about that one as happening.
I love that.
Kyle's got some of the funniest bits in the movie. I think that other than, trimming down the runtime a bit, the only other thing I would have changed about the movie is having a 2-camera situation going on, so that Kyle could have had a lot of B-roll of Kyle to intercut in different points. And that would actually serve to help tighten the movie up. If you were trimming out other bits here and there, you could stitch in like 10 seconds of Kyle B-roll in there where he's saying something or reacting to something. Well, yeah, it would just feel more like they were like a little crew of ghost hunters running around their house with their cameras.
Well, plus, like, I mean, he bounced a few times and went to other rooms, and that could have been him. He could have had like the same kind of little sessions that. Oh my God, why can't I remember his name right now? It's the other guy, Doug. Yes, about just maybe a little bit more of Kyle's personal reactions, kind of like how Doug had. That definitely could have been thrown in there a little bit.
I was having a hard time when I was originally cutting the first trailer. It was mainly because if you look at it, Kyle has a lot of interest and reactions, but he's not directly involved in most of the scares except for 2 main instances. One is when he's got the bloody hand that comes up behind him, which I did get on the trailer. And then the other is when he's attacked at the end, but I'm not gonna put that in a trailer. The trailers give away too much nowadays anyway. I'm not gonna put the
to that end, you did a really good job of putting that together, man. In terms of those decisions, because you easily could have thrown some shit in there like that would have spoiled key bits of it. But you didn't, and I'm proud of you. There's like that moment where they go outside at night, right? And he does hand Kyle the camera for a minute. And so Kyle gets to do like what Doug's been doing, like Cody was saying. And for that brief minute, it's like, oh shit, why wasn't there more of this, But then when you think about it, it's like they clearly had 2 cameras because they're filming a camera with like gross stuff on the hand strap. I feel like that camera was busted or something.
Probably.
So I'm sure there was the intent to have 2 cameras, but they only had one that worked well enough to do what they were trying to do or something maybe. So they just used the other one as a prop in the movie, which is smart,
Yeah, I mean, even I think I'm sure it was the start of the second day, like they show Kyle like setting up a tripod, and then it didn't ever kind of materialize. Like I don't remember there ever being like a.
Definitely should have used that tripod a little more. There is some scenes that could have benefited heavily from a tripod, but that's fine. Septim had to step away again real quick, so I don't know, man. I guess we're kind of at the point where we could start talking about favorites. I mean, I'm sure we'll have various praise or notes about other stuff as it comes to us, but do you have like, I guess a favorite moment, a favorite non-scare moment in the film, like maybe an exchange of dialogue or a certain scene where there's like cool shit in the background or anything like that?
I mean, I think we're on the same page with the mask for sure. I mean, I definitely that being at the beginning of the movie, like that already got me hooked into it, just looking at all that cool stuff. And I know it was kind of the reaction to something scary, but I mean, just as soon as Doug saw the guy in the shed, and then Kyle's like, just screw this, I'm out. And he was just gone. Like that was, but I mean, that's how most movies should be. I mean, fight or flight, and I mean, you might as well, like, why not bounce? It's not what you
Kyle
signed up
actually has a
to do. He's the
great meltdown too at that one part where he's like,
Yeah.
"Fuck this," and he's
Yeah.
like screaming and packing up all his shit.
he's pissed.
He went all out when he was doing his excitable reactions to stuff, and it comes across real good. He's got that like voice like a Goonies kid when he's screaming, like it just sounds good. So even as an adult, if I had a kid like that, I'd write in shit for him to be like flipping out like that because he just sounds rad when he's screaming. Doug did pretty good too, actually. They both had that like good quality. Maybe it's just being 15 or whatever it is, but they had that perfect like sort of, you know what I mean? That voice where it's like you're just hitting puberty, so you've got a little bit of that like little kid crackle still in your voice, and when you scream, you're in a higher register than you are as you get older. But it cuts through real good. I think that also helped out a lot with them in the scenes where they were like in separate rooms, shouting back and forth to each other. I think as you get older and the register of your voice goes down more, it tends to just echo off the walls and not cut through them like that, so it's
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes it looked excessive, so maybe it wasn't. I mean, on some of those scenes where Doug was crying, I mean, if those are real tears, like that was very well done.
I think they are, dude, because there's a point, if you look closely, you could see him taking his thumb and like pulling his fucking eyelid up off of his eye all gnarly, and then he comes up and he's crying again. So he's just really making himself cry, I think. And then not in a nice way.
That Blair Witch, like I'm so scared type moment. But there's one other thing that I used for the first trailer I thought was great is like my house possessed by spirits of the damned. Like I thought that was just great when he said like that.
Yeah,
it's good stuff. I don't know. We were just talking about little bits or like pieces of scenery that we especially liked, since we're kind of approaching, I guess, the end of it here. I don't know. You have any like favorite bits, like in terms of non-scare related scenes or dialogue exchanges or anything like that you want to highlight, or just bits of like background? We've touched a lot on the masks. We were just talking about them again. And then obviously, seeing the collections is cool. But I think my favorite bit of just scenery in the movie that's non-scare related or directly related when you first see it is that cellar door. It just looks so cool, dude. If I lived in that house, I would totally be like taking my cousins back there in that backyard and being like, yeah, there used to be an old man that lived in the shed back here, and it turned out he was killing kids in that fucking basement before we moved in. I would get in trouble like for shit like that all the time as a kid. I had my little cousin Jimmy convinced there was werewolves in the woods behind our house for years. It was just good times.
I mean, as far as non-scary, I'd say anything where they were talking movies, just because it shows, that regardless of things, they're still cinephiles. And you can see that, matter of fact, even to this day, you can look at Kyle's channel, Movie Buff One, and see how much of a collection he's got. He's got a pretty decent sized collection of pretty cool stuff in his house, which is awesome. He doesn't do a lot of pickups, but when he does, they're usually pretty awesome because he picks up some stuff that's not always on the beaten path. So it's really cool to see that level of horror right through in the film.
I gotta admit, I haven't watched his videos. I know he's watched mine, but I could see getting into him just based on the like supplemental stuff. They did a really cool intro where they shouted you out too for putting it together. The one where Kyle's talking up their long hair from back in the day.
It's actually kind of funny because they had it originally with a person that had been ready to put their stuff out. So they had originally filmed it for them, but then they backed out last minute. So they redubbed it. Thanking me and Evan Jacobs.
I thought I was just ripped, dude. Does the voice go off a little bit at the end there?
It's kind of funny when you watch it, and if you know what's going on, it's actually kind of funny.
I
But
thought that am I imagining that, or like towards the end when he's talking about you, I feel like it almost went like Kung Fu Movie a little bit, where the voices
yeah,
weren't quite timed in, and now you're saying they dubbed it. It makes sense. I thought that fucking weed was just hitting real good or something. I was like, no, this got to be in my head, and it only lasts for like a minute, so
oh
you
yeah,
know,
it's just that last part of the thing. And actually, in one of Kyle's most recent hunting videos, he picked up a full moon, the creeps, one that
nice.
that you had sent me, which I'd seen not too long ago,
That's a
which
cool
is
coincidence.
interesting coincidence. Yeah, so he's like, I wonder what this is about. So I think I'll pick this up, and I was like, yeah, it's a good film. I just watched it.
Yeah, Phil Fondacaro as Tiny Dracula is a thing to behold. Good times. How'd you find it? Do you like it?
I liked it. I thought it was fun.
I'd like to see it in 3D someday. I mean, I'm sure it's not fucking Avatar and IMAX or anything, but it's I'm sure it's still a good time, the fucking werewolf drooling all over the place and shit. You ever see The Creeps, Cody?
Oh yeah, I love it. Like during that little, I like that mid. I mean, I don't even want to say mid. Like the majority of the '90s full moon. I mean, Phil was in quite a bit of stuff around that time.
He
I mean,
was.
I like that. I like that movie. I like Sideshow. I like Blood Dolls. I mean, all that.
Fuck
I know
yeah,
he
dude.
wasn't like all that around that time. Like those are hideous. Head of the Family. Like that's.
Oh yeah,
That's that slightly cheaper but a lot sleazier fucking late 90s full moon run that they had before they really did go into a dark time for a little bit in those early 2000s. But they come back with Doll Graveyard in 2006 and then shit gets good again. So
Yeah. That,
but yeah, Creeps is so fucking fun, dude. I think that's one of those ones that it might become like part of my regular Halloween lineup because it is just a good sort of movie for that time of year. I feel like it's cheesy and I feel like if you watch that like back to back with Monster Squad, it would be a real good time. But yeah, I guess there you go. Ringing endorsement for The Creeps by Full Moon. Also called what is it, Deformed Freaks or something, which is just not a good title. I mean, I guess that's internationally where they don't value the little people like we do here, but without them we wouldn't have Ewoks, so we tend to shy away from that type of language when it comes to
right.
the smaller statured folks out there.
Them's fighting words.
Yeah. The Creeps is fine, and it is like a cool, cute sort of title for it. That's rad though. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check out his YouTube channel. In fact, I will go subscribe to it. Well, I'm not gonna do it right now, but I'll do it as soon as we're out of here.
He's got some fun on the set videos too, like when he did Sharkula and Camp Blood.
mm-hmm.
Dude.
I'm a sucker for all that behind the scenes stuff, so those are really fun to watch.
Shit,
Yeah,
Kyle,
he
you might
films,
have to give us permission to use some of those clips, like without the audio, so we can talk over them for certain stuff.
Yeah, if you look at his IMDb page, he has got a mile long of things he's been in. I mean, as far as low budget movie actors, he has definitely been in a lot of them.
And see, is Doug, the way you were talking about it makes it seem like Doug has continued working on it, but maybe isn't as active as Kyle?
Not as active.
That's odd. You would think it would be like the opposite, watching this without any prior knowledge of the dudes.
Right.
Because Doug is so much more the motivated filmmaker, it appears anyways in this. But then Kyle actually went on to just keep the dream alive, and Doug, obviously, I'm sure is doing it in his own way, but yeah, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, it's stuff I wouldn't want to go over on here, but definitely there's reasons.
Oh yeah, we don't need to get into any details or personal shit like that. I'm just saying, like, as an outsider, it's not what you'd immediately expect, right?
Well,
like,
definitely talented though. He's definitely a talented individual. Doug is. I have to say, looking at his work, he's just excellent at what he does.
Well, I think it was during one of the periods where you stepped away for a moment, but I was talking about how like properly shot this movie is in found footage terms. The guy had an eye, definitely, or at least a vision for how he wanted it, I think, to look. And there's some neat cinematography in the movie, if you want to call it that. where he shoots it in a way that it like looks good, but also still really makes sense in the context of it being like shot on this handheld camera. And that seems like it's a hard thing to do. I don't think I could shoot a found footage movie because I don't care about them enough to like think about it on that level, but you could tell I feel like that he was thinking about actually trying to make it look as good as he could. Which is some notes fucking a lot of bigger budget film found footage filmmakers could follow, you know. The movie, yeah, it's gonna look like shit to a point because it's found footage, but you gotta weave some quality into that shit, you know. And for being young kids, I'm blown away that Doug was able to do that seemingly effortlessly, you know. Because I
Right.
don't imagine much of this stuff was done with multiple takes or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think not also.
So I don't know. What else do we need to touch on here, Brandon? Or did he have to step away again? I'm trying to think if we've left anything out. I think we've covered the bulk of the movie outside of the finale, so
most of the music was lifted from other things. A lot of it, though, we were just kind of hoping that no one would notice. And the great thing about small releases is that no one will. Like that stuff that they're listening to on the tape player is lifted from another movie. But that last bit, that last music that's at the end, that's something that they did themselves, and that's pretty cool. It has sort of like that funeral feel to it. Because we've hit special effects pretty well. I mean, the one that they're the most proud of is that ending effect where Kyle gets stabbed and he pulls out the organ and eats it. And they're proudest of that scene.
it's good stuff, dude.
Yeah.
And Doug in that makeup. I mean, obviously, like when you first see the demon and the net was probably too obscure that it was Doug. And then he's got like the goosebump hands or whatever. And he's ripping the chains. But then when you see like the actual footage of him and he's doing like there's like a point where he's like fucking he looks properly fucking terrifying, man. The whole makeup job that they did on him for that with the contacts really came together nicely, I think.
Yeah, I love the close up at the end where you can see the green contact lenses where it just focuses in as it goes to the very end.
Yeah. Good stuff. Again, some cool cinematography shit there as well that we just aren't treated to that very often in these movies. So I do feel it should be highlighted. And the fact that it's a couple of teenagers that had the foresight to do that is pretty neat as well. But yeah, you know, I don't know, man. I love that whole finale bit, and the ripping of organs is always going to get a thumbs up from me. So. He has his hair though at a certain point. I think it's because they had to like get it back out of his, so they probably brushed his hair back a bunch around his face so that they could put the makeup on. And then he's like wearing like a dark shirt, right? And it kind of makes him look like Texas Chainsaw 2 Leatherface, but without the mask. Like it's just the quality of his hair and like his build a little bit. And I was laughing so fucking hard at that. I was like, oh shit, he's got that fucking level 2 Bubba hair going on right there. And it just adds a cool quality to it. It changes the look of him. It's almost like his hair is alive or something when he's doing that bit at the end. And I dig it. So it's happy accidents, man, as Bob Ross would say. They didn't intend for his hair to be like that, I'm sure. But just logistically, they had to get it out of his face to do the makeup. And then it was just hanging out like that, and they shot it or whatever, and it just adds a cool quality to it.
I got a little Sterling vibe.
Yeah. Well, we needed some mullets in this movie. I think that would have upped the quality of it a couple of stars if we had one or two of those in this boy.
Actually,
I've seen possessed. That should be the Shackled Mullet project. Should be the next fucking one.
I've seen some Sterling films that didn't quite make it up to this level.
Not even close.
This is better than probably conservatively a quarter of the Sterling movies that I own. And again, that's not us just trying to sing praise to Kyle or these dudes because Kyle's a friend of the channel. I do like this movie. Okay, is it a movie I would watch 12 times? No, bro. I'm sorry. I don't have that kind of time for this, but I did enjoy it, and I will be watching it again with the commentary, and looking forward to doing a follow-up interview with those guys. If anything, just to try to convince them to get back out there and do some type of a follow-up to this. You know, jokes aside, it deserves one.
Yeah.
I don't know. So what else do you think we need to hit here, Brandon?
I think we've hit it pretty much all of it, other than maybe favorite scares, and maybe that can be the end of it. What is your favorite of the monsters that show up?
Oh, that badass Hormel chili man in the fucking shed is my favorite one. I don't know what was using down Kyle's face when he was in there, but just like you said, the whole screen sort of filtering it and obscuring it, and just the way it's shot, and he's in there saying creepy shit, and I don't know, I love it, man. I love it.
It makes it look really creepy.
Like strange visual like that, like the Harmony Korine stuff, or movies like Begotten, where it's like they could have shot a movie like that. I think they had the technical know-how to put together a real disturbing, like abstract visual art piece. If they were of the desire to do that. Most people aren't, but it would be cool to see what they could have put together with that, just based on that one scene. So that would be mine, as the dude in the judge.
I think mine would be that one also. I would go maybe as far as unexpected. Would probably be a toss-up between the alien and the dude out in front of their house. 2 bathrobes.
Oh yeah, that's probably my favorite. It's the one with the brain.
They should have had that alien in the bathrobe, like sniff a thing of milk. Like some Big Lebowski shit. I'd have been about that. I think favorite dialogue is that Empire Strikes Back nod. That made me laugh so fucking hard. It's impossible. I love it. What were you saying, Brandon, about the brain?
My favorite is the bathrobe one with the brain that comes out and chases them. I just like that scene where you can see it just it switches up, and you see it's slow pan over to it, and it's just really cool that way.
Yeah.
And then Kyle gets in there, and either was a Kyle or Doug, I can't remember who gets there and shuts it in the other guy's face.
Yeah.
Where he shows up. It's just to me one of the more fun scenes in the film. I just enjoy it.
Also, shout out to Doug throwing that flying V in there. He's like, that's good stuff. That's great stuff.
Just letting the ladies letting the ladies know that there's options.
Yeah, this demon's unchained for real. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that I would definitely recommend this movie for people to check out if they're a fan of, say, like the early Polonia stuff, or even the earlier Chris Seaver stuff, or just any proper DIY shit. This isn't even doing a movie for Sterling Entertainment DIY. This is actually just kids in a basement at the end of the day. And I'll always be a fan of that stuff. Just people getting out there and using their passion to make some schlock of their own, and these guys succeeded, and I would really like to check out some of the other stuff that's been mentioned tonight. But if you're a fan of like proper grassroots, like ground level DIY punk rock fucking filmmaking, this is where it's at, man. Stuff like this, kids just doing it, getting it done.
And then to bridge that gap, I mean, Kyle does stuff for Polonia now. So
yep, full fucking circle, man.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, his role in Sharkula is pretty much, I'd say his role in Sharkula rivals any of the other roles. He's got the most screen time as next to Dracula himself.
Yeah.
So
and him and Jeff are great together as Renfield and Dracula. It was I really enjoyed that movie. I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Wait, Kyle plays Renfield?
Yes, he does. He does an excellent job being creepy. If you haven't seen it, Sharkula is worth one watch, definitely.
We're covering it eventually on here for sure.
Not worth the 5 watches that I put in to do a analysis on, but definitely worth the 1 watch.
Yeah,
Yeah, man,
I'd say do two, so you can do one with commentary, but then you might need a break for a little while before you watch it again.
I still got to get a copy. Hopefully, it's still in print. That's
And I was
SRS,
happy
right?
they did a commentary with Mark Polonian and Jeff Kirkendall, which was a really cool one. And of course, they both spoke up Kyle in it, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Shit, man, I didn't realize that he was as thick in it as you guys are now turning me on to. So I'm gonna have to check out his IMDb and peep some of that other stuff. As you guys know, and as I'm sure we mentioned several times on the show by this point, uh, I'm usually hanging out more in the retro schlock sort of avenue, so stuff that was made before these dudes were even born. But you know, you guys are schooling me up on that shit, and I'm sure just going through fucking Kyle's filmography, I'll find a lot of cool stuff that I've been aware of based on the title and the cover art, but I haven't watched yet.
Yeah, there's some cool ones like Cult of the Shadow People. There's one that I thought he really did good in, but it's so hard to find, called Closing Time, which was a really good film. I can't think of the director's name that did it, but it was a really awesome one. And sadly, they kind of let that go out there. I was lucky enough to have Kyle help me get a copy, but it was a wonderful film. Kyle didn't play as big a part in those, but he did play a pretty significant part.
I guess my thing that I would say to Kyle and Doug is you guys also really need to get this stuff available somewhere like a Vimeo. Well, it is, as we mentioned, available on Vimeo, but make sure that you keep it out there and all your other projects you have access to, because just for the sake of preserving it, you know, if you can make physical copies and sell however many of them, that's rad. But it being out there, not lost to time, is a lot more important too. I think after having seen this, it would break my heart if I like knew that this was, if in some alternate reality they had lost this or something, or just never bothered to put it out and like chucked it away, you know. And I'm kind of in a similar situation with my short film that I did, actually weirdly right around the same time, man. Like, you know, mine was more like 14 or 15 years ago now at this point, but all I have is like one bit of raw footage of the kill in the movie, and that's it. You know, I can't find the fucking hard drive that has the actual full short film on it anymore, and it bums me out. You know, I wish that I had like not gotten, because it, you know, like anything, when you make something artistic or creative, you do it and you're hyped on it until it's done, and then you as the person who made it, you know, it's easy to fall into that trap where you're like, this sucks, why would anybody want to watch this, you know? And then so you end up fucking taking it down or something. I'm horrible about that kind of stuff, or used to be. I've gotten a lot better about it. Now I just kind of accept that once something's done, it's done, it's out there, who cares, you know, people are gonna like it or not. But if this was somehow lost to time, I would like my little short film. It apparently is, hopefully not, but time will tell. Point is, I'd be bummed. So keep it out there, guys. Keep your shit out there in some form, digital, physical, however you want to do it. Push comes to shove, no one's buying it. Just put it out there for free, and you might get people coming back around asking for physical copies of it. But as long as it's out there in the ether as part of the framework of indie horror, I'm stoked on it, and I think that other people will be too.
I'd love to see him do, and I talked to him about it, and he's kind of been like wishy-washy on it, but I'd love to see him do a release, try and do a physical release, probably at limited this level, unless he can find better takers, of all the short films, basically, that they've done, because they've done a whole bunch of them, and just like do a short film compilation set. I mean, those are pretty awesome.
Shackled Shorts project.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it, guys. Get it out there. Don't be wishy-washy. We need to see that shit. We need to talk about it on the show. It deserves to be preserved in some way. And even if you just do physicals of it for you to have yourself, that's rad. Then you won't end up in the position I'm in, where it's like, well, I'd love to be able to like show my friends the old short film I did so we could laugh at it, but I can't, because I can't fucking find it, you know? So if you have the ability to make some type of physical catalog of that stuff, even for your own pleasures, I would recommend getting with Brandon and doing that. And I'll buy a copy. So there you go. sure Cody will too.
You bet.
So yeah, I don't know what else is there here. I guess you know.
Yeah, I think we've got pretty much everything.
I think we did it. There's really no favorite characters. I mean, because there's only two, and I like them both. They're good dudes. It seems like.
Yep.
You can't pick just one.
Yeah, they're a package deal. See, I don't any, but I mean, would you guys recommend this to your fellow DIY fans, or what's up? I mean, we get the ring and endorsement all around on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If they're a fan of the same style that we are, I think they would enjoy it.
Yeah, anybody who's a fan of like shot on video horror, I think this would be right up their alley.
Indeed. So I guess we're done. We did it, boys. We're officially a fucking franchise. We're not just a trilogy of episodes of a dead podcast or something. We're keeping it going, man. I think our next episode is going to be for video violence. Am I correct on that, or are we just?
Yeah, the double feature.
Yeah, we're doing both of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with we were trying to do. Then we were supposed to take a break because of Halloween season to do the Death Lantern double feature, and then we come back to Cody's choice in November, which I can't remember what your choice was, Cody.
Monos, the Hands of Fate.
Yes. Fuck yeah, dude. And that'll set it up to where we can eventually do Monos Returns, which will give me an excuse to buy and watch the shit out of that, because I love Monos, the Hands of Fate. And I don't know how I've managed to, like resist the urge to jump on that Monos Returns. I want it. I see it on fucking Joe's website, and it's like, I'm gonna get it, but I'll get it later. I don't know why. There's like subconsciously, I think I was waiting for us to be able to cover it. So
You'll like it.
Good times. It'd be in a perfect world, we'd be able to take acid and then cover it, so we would be in the same state of mind as fucking Torgo or whatever when he was shooting his scenes. But I don't know how well that would translate to a podcast.
Right.
Yeah. Seeing stuff like this, I think I haven't watched them do their commentary on it yet, but I imagine it is a fun trip down memory lane mixed with them kind of riffing on their own stuff a little bit too.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking forward to giving that a go. But yeah, we've got some cool stuff planned for the future, guys. I mean, that video violence double feature is going to be a milestone for sure. That is one of the all-time great shot on video fucking classics, and the sequel's pretty goddamn good too. And then obviously the Death Lantern double feature is going to be a lot of fun. That introduces the sievage to the mix over here at Schlockaholics, which will lead to some really cool things. And then obviously, we got that Manos action coming in after that. So lots of good times ahead. Hopefully we can start scheduling some interviews with some of these guys for you. We're going to be reaching out to Kyle. We're going to be reaching out to Bobby Heckman. Chris Seaver's definitely going to be in the mix over here at some point, probably fairly frequently. We're going to look into getting some Joe Sherlock interviews, and maybe, just maybe, we can romance the mullet enough to score that David Sterling fucking. I'll tickle that shit, bro, the whole time. Just get over here and let's talk. Let's give us the dirt on some of this stuff. And then Brad Sykes, that guy's shown some interest in this, so hopefully we can, put some things in place to have a sit down with him as well. Really would love to talk about his Camp Blood movies and Within the Woods and that.
Creator, but even and probably the best director of the best of the series.
Yeah,
Debatably,
I mean,
yes.
I don't know. I mean, is it though? I think those first three probably are just the best. There's some good stuff outside of that, but yeah, it's hard to beat that stuff. But I'm very particular about that era of like low budget movies too. So those first three Camp Bloods are like, it's right in the sweet spot for me. Other than that, I can't really think of anybody offhand that I immediately want to get in here. There's this dude Sean Wright that did Night of the Axe and Spirit Board, a couple of short films that I think you guys would really enjoy, and hopefully we can also cover those at some point on here. Get him in here for a sit down, kind of promote a little bit, encourage him to get out there and complete that full length version of Night of the Axe, which is basically just Friday the 13th Part 2 worship. And I'm all about that. Sackhead Jason rules. So We'll be talking about plenty more of that with Bobby Heckman when we get him on here as well.
Yeah.
So that's about the
Always loving
skinny of it,
those.
guys. What's that? What were you saying?
Always loving those fan films or odes too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Night of the Axe isn't necessarily an official fan film, if you want to call him that, but it's more just like a dude with a burlap sack on his head, fucking people up.
Yeah.
There's just something scary about the burlap sack, man. Between Town That Dreaded Sundown and Friday the 13th Part 2, which obviously was inspired by Town That Dreaded Sundown. They're fucking scary, man. Even if I just see one with like apples in it, I just immediately think of someone just putting it on their head and hit it's like fucking piercing me with a pitchfork or something. So yeah, beware of those burlap sacks, kids. We will see you back here in the very next episode of Schlockaholics. I might go on later for some pickups. I don't know. Might save those for another time. Depends. But I've been Mosley. We have been, the Schlockaholics. We all are Schlockaholics. You guys are too. And we'll see you back here next time.